Thanks, John. And Haley, holy smokes, your musical team here is fantastic, phenomenal musicians. Yeah, very lucky. And it's really an honor for me to have your leadership team invite me to speak. I'm going to give a different kind of talk than what I normally do at a Unity service because I'm going to step in the topic of politics. And it might be uncomfortable for some of you, and if so, John and I are going to stay after service, and you can try to straighten us out during the discussion time. So, I want to talk specifically to Unity and New Thought people, because I think we have something very important to offer at this time when certain bells are not ringing very well in our society. So I'm hoping to kind of be a burr under the saddle pad for some of you, and for those of you who already are engaged in sacred activism, I just hope this is solidarity and shoring up and sharing together. I want to lead out by saying politics is not the same as partisan. Politics is about policy and governance and how we govern ourselves. Partisanship is about the parties and the others and the othering. And you can be politically engaged without being partisan. So those two words often get used interchangeably, and I just want to make that difference. I've actually believed for a long time, I think my partner would agree with me, that we need to evolve beyond a two-party system at some point anyway, to really get to the place where we can govern ourselves effectively. That being said, I'll be very straight. I think the current leadership in this country is the biggest threat to democracy, the American experiment, and just civility that we have seen in a long time, ever, historically, ever. I think that's where we're at, and so I'm going to talk to you about sacred activism because I think our movement really has something to offer right now. And I'm going to speed it up a little bit so that we can give John plenty of time to share what he has to share. So sacred activism, can someone put up my first slide? I only have a few slides, I promise. So sacred activism is like the fusion of spiritual knowledge and wisdom with radical action in our outer world, action to really do something, make a better world. As your opening song is fantastic, actually. I want to get the words to that. I was told you wrote that. That's amazing. That's what we're talking about. And there are many forms of activism. As I was listening to the music this morning, I was realizing we are swimming through a cultural soup of separation consciousness and meanness. And even just to have the discipline to keep ourselves in higher consciousness and in a consciousness of unity, that is a form of activism. That's an inner activism. Prayer, meditation, those types of things. What I want to focus on today, though, is the more out there in the world active meditation. Part of my personal ministry is to get more of our spiritual practitioners active in the real world. Let's take our meditation off the mat and into the messes. So that's what I'm specifically focused on with the bulk of this talk. I believe spirituality that's focused only on one's personal growth and awakening, it's good for the person, but I believe it's missing the mark for the times that we are in right now. We need a shift in consciousness, and who better to bring that about than people who practice these kinds of principles that Unity and New Thought represent. So on the other hand, and I know this from personal experience, any of you who have worked with A Course in Miracles, for me, was a game-changing concept in A Course in Miracles about how much attack do you have in you. I have on just innately a lot of attack in me. I have lived in a lot of battlefields. I'm a warrior, right? I had to realize when I went through a very intense life reorganization, let's call it, that actually is not very helpful. We need to be above the level of thinking that creates the problems in the first place. And so while on the one hand, I think we spiritual practitioners need to get off our tushes and get a little more active, I also think we have to do it with spiritually grounded principle, or we just continue to create the problem. We continue to create battlefields. And I'm not going to stand up here and tell you I have a lock on this. I have a very hard time right now seeing the Christ in certain people. I just do. I have family members who are completely estranged because of these issues, and I know probably some of you do too, and I'm going to share some more about that during discussion. I didn't want to take time with it, but there are tools for dealing with that as well. So I'm standing up here talking to myself as much as to you all. I just think it's an important topic to take head on. For me, I think a lot of this is about realizing there were way showers, just like the mystic that he read in the meditation. Jesus was not a pacifist. He was an activist. He was radically active. Gandhi, others, Tutu, so many. I think, however, the difference is you can say what you are doing is not okay without saying you are not okay. You are bad. And I work on that every single day when I'm working on these issues. I'm getting better. I'm building those muscles. I can at least not voice or act on some of the things I would like to be doing, right? So that's part of my growth with this. Can I see the next slide, please? Oh, you're already there. Probably most of you know that these are the 5 principles of unity. If you're brand new, this is a great thing to look at to see if unity is a fit for you. We believe that there's not some out there God that we beseech to, but that rather it is a force in and through everything. I do talks about the metaphysics of Star Wars even, and the Force, and that we all, each of us, have that spark of divinity within. Our mind, our thoughts help shape the reality that we experience. Prayer is a high level of that mind activity. And it ends with action. This is the one that I land on a lot. The 5th principle of unity is action. And I want to read you something. Probably many of you know that we had a historic moment in our unity movement just recently when Unity World Headquarters and Unity Worldwide Ministries became one. And that joint body put out a statement related to or addressing the times that we are in. And I want to read this. It's on the website, and it's called the Joint Unity Statement on Freedom, Love, and the Call to Courage. It starts with the quote that I'm going to skip. You can find it on the website. In unity, we teach and know that every person is a vital and irreplaceable expression of the divine. Every soul carries this divine spark, and with it an unshakable worthiness for safety, dignity, and belonging. We affirm the Christ Spirit as the true authority within each person, not imposed by intimidation, but realized through love, wisdom, and the free unfolding of the soul. Our nation's founding ideal, e pluribus unum, out of many, one, calls us to form a more perfect union. Democracy requires all of us to actively participate, share our values, and stand for our beliefs. We reject domination, coercive control, and the seeming unraveling of the principles of democracy intended by our forefathers, for these run counter to the spiritual law of liberty in Christ consciousness, the divine truth that freedom is our birthright, realized in love, never imposed by force. Unity around the world stands on the truth that every being is an expression of God. This truth compels us to end division, to stand shoulder to shoulder, and let compassion be our action, peace our path, and spirit our unwavering guide. We are committed to building a world where all life can breathe, belong, and thrive. In a nation founded to honor liberty and law, justice always prevails. Families are preserved. Leaders speak for their communities without fear of retribution. Education is upheld with integrity and accountability. Courts act fairly to challenge discrimination, and government protects and serves all. And we know that these same principles resonate far beyond our borders, reminding the global family of humanity that our shared reminding the global family of humanity of our shared longing for justice, peace, and freedom. The pattern we see today, when unchecked power grows, when fear is weaponized, when trust collapses, and when people are driven apart, is not political. It is instead a spiritual crisis. History shows us that such systems strip away rights, voices, and dignity unless they are collectively and courageously confronted. When sacred truths about justice, equity, and democracy are traded for control, censorship, and fear, we must remember this is not freedom for all, and it is not who we are called to be. What can we do? We can respond with hope. We do not despair. We can speak up. We are not silent. We can act. We are not powerless. This moment calls us to rise, not in silence or fear, but with clear minds, bold hearts, and compassionate spirits. Guided by the teachings of Unity co-founders Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, we will honor the divine nature within ourselves and others, co-creating a world where love, truth, and justice prevail. So that's from your Unity movement. That's from your Unity movement. One of the things that gives me hope in these times, as John said, I have worked on environmentalism and economic system change my entire adult life. Our systems were failing before the last election. We have systemic problems that must now be addressed. And I think the opportunity in these dark times is to actually not just try to go back to what was or the way things were, go back to a normal that might have been a norm but wasn't serving very well. These are times to actually come through this, making deep, fundamental, systemic level change. One of my favorite terms ever now is CHAORD. Can I see that slide, please? CHAORD. And it means pockets of new order rising out of chaos. This is the opportunity within us. And I do believe it requires the parallel paths of stepping out strongly in the world and saying, no, not okay. Not going to go down on my watch, and doing it in a spiritually grounded, elevated state of consciousness, and catching when we slip and coming back, choosing again and coming back to that level of consciousness. As I noted, there are many forms of activism, and again, the one that I really want to lean on most directly is direct civic action. I have now taken part in protests in 3 different states, multiple different communities. I'm hoping that more and more of our Unity and New Thought people will do so. These are actually really joyous gatherings, and it's a solidarity, and it's also it's good for you. For me, it's actually self-care, because you get out there and you realize there are so many of us who are not going to let democracy go down without a fight. So many. So I really encourage you. I'm going to pull up, I think I'm going to give you in a second. Yeah, I should be. I don't know when the next No King's Day is scheduled, but I will let you know that there is a really interesting widespread body of research now that shows that when you are resisting an authoritarian takeover attempt, when the population gets to 3.5% of the population actually going to the streets, being active, those win. Those movements win. The first No King's Day, we had about 1 million. The second, I think we had 3.5, 4 million. This last one, we had 7 million Americans saying no. And yes, if we get to 12 million, that's 3.5% for us here. So I just really encourage everybody to think about it. This is a time to get out of the comfort zone and take to the streets a little bit with love, with unity, and with toughness, with fortitude. So can I see the next slide? Ellen Davenport, who many of you know her, she's the one who wrote Unity 5 Principles book, and she really does, she kind of oversees a lot of the Unity publications. She put this together, and this is a checklist for getting your consciousness ready going into civic engagement. I run through this myself every time before I step out of that car into whatever action I'm going to take? Can we see the one in them? Can we see the spark? And can we say, I'm still going to say what's happening here is not okay. I'm going to stand up to this. I will also want to put out there, if you are going to be involved in direct action, a very embodied spiritual practitioner of mine, an elder of mine, longtime Unity member, she shared with me the wonderful adage, yes, have faith and tie up your camel, right? So for me also, when I'm going into these direct actions, I'm making sure that I'm aware of my surroundings. If a car comes through the crowd, where's my exit route, right? I'm looking, do I see anything that I should be paying attention to or others should be paying attention to? I have never had it happen. I have never had any ugliness. The only bit of ugliness was in Prineville, Oregon, and I loved this. One of those guys in the big truck came by and all the flags, and he revved it up and burned his tires, screeched down in front of the protesters, and the cops arrested him just like that. Or they didn't arrest him, I'm sorry, they pulled him over and gave him a ticket, just like that, in front of us. That was a little delicious, and probably not in my best consciousness, but gosh, it was fun in the moment. Can I see the next slide, please? So I also think it's really important these are intense times we're in, right? And those of us, like I am a news junkie, I use that loosely, but infotainment junkie. And I listen to it across the political spectrum so that I really know kind of what the dynamics are. I also know sometimes I need to take a break. And I very intentionally also tune into positive news sources. And these are a few: Happy Eco News, Good News Network, Positive News. There's a lot of good happening, but you don't hear about it in the if it bleeds, it leads media environment that we are all immersed in. So it's really useful to get a bigger picture, a more complete picture, by tuning into the positive stuff too. Independent media is becoming increasingly important. I have a Substack called Transcend. I hope you'll check into that. I write about these issues and the blend between politics and spirituality. And again, action is the best antidote to despair. Taking some action, whatever that may be. Next slide, please. And I'm going to leave you with this so that we can get John up here really quickly. These are just some really useful resources. Indivisible.org is really the best resource right now for knowing about what is going on when it comes to collective action and direct action. They're doing a fantastic job. And that's the QR code for my Transcend, or you can find it on my website. And I'll just end with reiterating what I said. Right now we are in an intense and important time. And I believe that our movement, spiritually grounded people who have tools to be able to face what's going on in the outer environment, knowing that in the field of possibility, there is so much more potential for good to come out of this than what might be readily visible. We're important right now. You all are important right now. And I just wanted to leave you with that. And I loved your song, because my affirmation is that we will indeed use these intense times to break through and shine that light even brighter. So thank you for being here. Go forth, take action, and prosper. And John's going to come up now.
Well, Sylvia is always a very hard act to follow. So I was a little nervous getting up here today. I have absolutely no ministerial credentials whatsoever. And I was sitting down here watching the very adaptable gentleman who was doing the announcements, with the monologue coming from John at the piano and a few comments from our saxophone player. And I realized these guys are just making it up as they go. So I feel very comfortable about that. I was actually raised, lived for a number of years right on 46th Street. Used to ride right here on my bicycle to go to South Eugene High School. So it's like coming home. So Sylvia asked me to say a few words this morning on my view of sacred activism from the standpoint of somebody who spent most of their adult life in the Oregon political arena. And I want to start by saying or acknowledging that I am not a particularly religious man in the traditional sense, but I do feel quite spiritual, particularly when I'm down in a river canyon at night on a beach with brilliant stars overhead and the murmur of distant rapids filling the air. And at those moments I know that I'm part of a creative force that infuses every aspect of the cosmos. Something that's always been here, something that will always be there, something vast and beautiful that we all came from, and to which we will all eventually return. And in a sense, I was thinking about this before I came down here, I think my approach to politics flows from that same belief. And that's a belief that at the end of the day, we're all spiritual beings having a human experience, and we have a shared set of aspirations that actually we all want the same thing during this brief moment of life. I mean, think about it. Each of us in our own way wants to find meaning and purpose and fulfillment. All of us want to be valued and to add value, whether that's to our family or to our community or to something else. And all of us want to feel like we've had an equitable opportunity to succeed. An equitable opportunity to improve ourselves, to be the best version of ourselves, to fulfill our own potential, however that may be defined. Not necessarily a guarantee of equal outcomes, but a fair and just opportunity to try. Those are things that are common, I think, to humanity. And it's in this space of opportunity, this space where each and every one of us gets the opportunity to make our individual contribution to the larger whole, that the fabric of our society is woven. And I think the strength of that fabric, the vibrancy, its resilience, and the very beauty is proportional to the number of people who have woven in their individual life experiences. And when anyone is denied the opportunity to do so, denied the opportunity to participate in creating this ever-evolving tapestry of humanity, then we're all diminished. And the fabric itself is weakened, and the bonds between us begin to dissolve. And I think that much of what is wrong with politics today is that we've forgotten who we are. We've forgotten who we are, and we've lost touch with the shared humanity that ultimately is what binds us together. And I think what's missing is exactly the kind of moral compass, the kind of a North Star that Sylvia was discussing. She calls it sacred activism. I call it community. And I actually don't think there's a lot of difference between the two. I believe that a sense of community is what gives us adhesiveness. It's that sense of community that holds us together and allows us to move beyond our differences and act collectively for the common good, to do amazing things together that benefit the entire society that would be impossible for us to do as individuals. And the one essential ingredient necessary to build community is a sense of common purpose, which is really, I think, what's missing in our state and in our nation today. There isn't a sense of common purpose. There isn't a sense of shared identity. What motivated and inspired my entire journey through Oregon politics is the belief that the common purpose that most characterizes and preserves us, the common purpose that builds the strongest and most enduring kind of community, is a commitment to equity of opportunity. It's a recognition that as individual human beings, we share not only a common mortality, but we share a common set of aspirations. And yet, when a growing number of people in our state and in our nation are denied a fair opportunity to pursue those aspirations, we weaken the bonds of the very community that sustains us. And we open the door to the politics of blame and the politics of hate and the politics of division that are overtaking our nation and, sadly, to some extent, overtaking us in this state of ours. So to me, sacred activism is simply remembering who we are. It is remembering that community matters. It's remembering that Oregon can't be a good place for all of us to live until it's a good place for all of us to live. It won't be a good place for any of us to live until it's a good place for all of us to live. And that it can't be a good place for all of us to live until we can restore and rebuild our sense of community and common purpose. And it strikes me that today across our nation, There are voices from both ends of the political spectrum that are fanning the flames of perceived differences for partisan advantage. And somehow and inexplicably to me, we have chosen to allow ourselves to be captured by this false narrative of extremes. Red states, blue states, left and right, Republicans and Democrats, blame and division. It's a narrative that doesn't have any center. It's a narrative without a common purpose. And it's a narrative that is absolutely toxic to community. And it doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be that way. And I also don't think it reflects who we really are as Oregonians and as members of this country. During the Great Recession back in 2011, right after I got elected to my third term, I went off to Prineville, Oregon, and unemployment was just over 18%. And I'll never forget seeing 3 extension cords connected end to end, probably 200 feet in all, running from one house to power a space heater in another house where the utilities had been shut off because the family couldn't afford to pay the bill. That's people reaching out to one another, people reaching out to one another, people caring for one another. It was powerful. And we see it during floods and windstorms and wildfires. We see it in our hospitals, we see it in our schools, we see it in our farms and our ranches. And it's an expression. It's expression of this sense of caring and compassion that resides in the hearts of each and every one of us. Sacred activism is reigniting that, is recognizing that it's there, and as Sylvia says, taking action on it. Why then, if that is the spark within each and every one of us, why then have we allowed our political and civic rhetoric to become so toxic in this country? Why have we chosen to allow the bitterness and division in our nation's capital to undermine, to dampen, to diminish the spark of shared humanity here in Oregon, like throwing a blanket over a beacon of light and hope? It doesn't have to be that way. It's a choice. Partisanship is a choice, and so is civility. I can tell you that after spending most of my adult life in public service in Oregon, I know, and I think you know, that what people in our state and across this land really want is community. They yearn for a sense of commonality. They yearn for a sense of common purpose. They yearn to work together for the greater good. Think of it this way: sacred activism, quite simply, is a way to apply and realize the mission of Unity of the Valley. Transform lives through universal wisdom and love. When I started practicing medicine down the road in Roseburg in 1974, I was 27 years old, and I was 6 months out of my internship, and I was flat out terrified about this new responsibility. And I imagine my patients were pretty terrified too when they showed up in the ER and found this 27-year-old rookie doctor there to greet them. But what I remember most about that time, what I remember most is how vulnerable the people were who came to see me. They were sick, they were injured, they were frightened, they were looking for help. And they didn't know me, but they put their trust and sometimes their very lives in my hands. It was an amazing thing. In the 18 years I practiced in the emergency room, I can't remember a single instance where I checked someone's party registration before I treated them. I can't remember ever wondering whether Republicans bleed different than Democrats, or whether cardiovascular disease or cancer respect ideology or partisanship. In this difficult time, in this uncertain time of division and fear, we have a choice. We have a choice about what we want our state to be. We have a choice about who we want to be as fellow Oregonians and as fellow human beings. One choice is the one we've been making, is to buy into the fear and the anger around us and feed its negative energy. The other choice is, armed with sacred activism, we can look beyond through the soft eyes of compassion and understanding and see each other as fellow human beings and remember who we really are. We have a choice. It's a choice to put understanding before reaction, which is, I think, what Sylvie was talking about. It's a choice to put collaboration before conflict and to put reconciliation before recrimination. And no matter how bad it seems out there, reconciliation begins within each of us, and we need a lot of that right now. It begins in the heart of each individual, fueled by a desire and a choice to make our community better, to repair the fabric of our society, and to make Oregon a good place for all of us to live. You know, Syl and I went through quite a bit in the last 10 years. I'm not naive. I've been over the cliff and dragged down the street. But I still believe that each and every one of us wants to rise above our own worst day and give something back to our community and to our family and to one another. And I still believe in the power of individuals acting from compassion and courage to change the world in which they live for a better place. It's a choice, and it's a choice we need to make. I want to leave you with the words of one of my mentors, the late Vietnamese Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh, who once said, "When I lose my direction, I look for the North Star and I go north." It doesn't mean that I expect to reach the North Star. It's just the direction that I want to go. So let's choose this morning to go in the direction of equity and opportunity. Let's choose to go in the direction of understanding and compassion and generosity and rebuild this state and this world of ours. And so it is.